Welcome to Forum 360. I'm Leslie Ungar, your host today. Thank you for joining us for our global outlook with a local view. Since the beginning of time, people have been interested in outer space, that expanse that exists beyond Earth and between celestial bodies. The space program has provided many of our lives-defining moments. Most of us remember where we were the night Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, and where we were when the Challenger exploded. The misquote, "Houston, we have a problem," is part of pop culture for generations of Americans. As individuals and as Ohioans, our lives have been interwoven with the space program. John Glenn was more than Ohio's favorite son. We all thought of him like a next-door neighbor. Judy Resnick was in my carpool. Today, we will find out that Akron's connection to Houston are stronger than ever. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Akron's Steve Koerner, Johnson Space Center Deputy Director. And welcome to Forum 360.
Thank you, Leslie. Glad to be here.
I want to start with your connection to Akron. So you graduated from Stowe High School and then went to the University of Akron. What are some of your early memories of growing up in Ohio?
You know, my father was one of 6, and my mom was one of 5 siblings, and so had a huge extended family, 17 first cousins, most of which were within a 20-mile radius of Akron. So growing up in Stowe, there were some in Kent and Bath and Northampton, but memories of family events, especially around the holidays, going to Cuyahoga Valley National Park, sled riding at Virginia Kendall. Family permeates my memories of growing up in Ohio. Big sports fan, Indians, I guess Guardians starting next year, Cavs, Browns. Specifically, fondly remember going out to Richfield Coliseum and watching Mark Price, my favorite professional sports athlete, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So sports was a big piece of that as well.
Now, did you have to give up your Cleveland allegiance when you went to Texas?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I maybe added some other favorite teams, but very excited to see to continue to watch Cleveland sports. Perhaps a little easier with technologies these days. I can catch most of the games, but still a huge Cleveland sports fan.
Now, you mentioned the Coliseum, and I remember the Coliseum. In fact, I passed where it used to be on my way to the studio today. Are there any other favorite places or hangouts that you can remember?
You know, just down the hill from the Coliseum, we used to go to a little, I don't even know if it's still there. I think it was called the Winking Lizard or something like that.
It is still there.
We'd get hot wings and things like that. That was kind of a family event to go there.
Yes.
My dad was a big ball player, so I would, especially when younger, would travel and in the region and just go to baseball games with him. So specifically remember that. And then the old Cleveland Browns, Cleveland Indians Stadium on the lake there. My uncle actually owned an RV, and we would take that extended family in an RV up to watch an Indians game, and you know, it was a 30-minute drive, but we would all pile in the RV and go up and watch the Indians there. I have not been to a game at the, I say new stadiums. I recognize they're not very new, but yeah, that old stadium, boy, that holds some memories.
Now, I'm not sure this is a fair question because I'm not sure if they were on your side of town at the time, but you know, we have Swenson's and Skyway that are kind of unique to Northeast Ohio of eating in your car. Did you have a favorite, Swenson's or Skyway?
Oh, Swenson's, absolutely. You know, there might be a few more around now than I remember. There was one there just off of 8, kind of near Chapel Hill, that is where we would go. I don't know what the recipe was for their hamburgers, but Swenson's absolutely, in my opinion.
And in all of the state of Texas, there is nothing like that, right?
Nothing like a Swenson's.
All right.
Texans has its barbecue that's hard to beat, but yeah, I'll take Swenson's.
Now, you went to the University of Akron, and you majored in mechanical engineering. At the time, do you remember what your plan was to do with your degree?
Well, you know, earlier you mentioned some key events in human spaceflight, and I also remember as a young child watching I don't think it was Apollo 11 and Neil Armstrong, but I do remember watching some astronauts walk on the lunar surface on a little black and white TV. I remember watching a spacecraft in the night sky looking like a star going across the sky, and interested me, but I really didn't understand what that entailed. And not till about high school, and always kind of interested in problem solving and what is a hard challenge that I could apply myself to, and human spaceflight definitely fills that. But again, even in high school, wasn't quite sure about NASA, or didn't even have an appreciation for the benefit that University of Akron would offer me. But you also mentioned the Challenger accident. I was a junior in high school, and I can remember being in the cafeteria when that happened. And I think it was momentary, but I had this sense of determination of, human space flight's hard. I would love to participate in solving a hard problem. There was some national pride at stake in my mind. Me personally, my personal priorities, faith, family, and then the United States. And so anything I could do to benefit the country. But I think those thoughts at that time were maybe idealistic to me. I didn't really appreciate the potential to being able to come to work for NASA. So I fast forward into my engineering degree, and you asked about what was my planning around that. To be honest, when I was prior to college, I was strong in math and science, but I didn't fully appreciate what an engineering degree could do for me. So I was excited to go pursue engineering without a crystal clear recipe of what followed with that degree. One of the benefits, or two of the benefits the University of Akron offered was a strong engineering program. And then secondly, and this was almost a stumbling block for me personally, secondly, every engineer at the time needed to do a one-year internship, or what they called a co-op program. And being the high school student, I thought, well, why in the world would I want to extend college 5 years when I could get it done in 4 years? And so what was actually a very beneficial thing almost caused me not to pursue going there. And so University of Akron benefited me from having that ability to internship, which I did with the Johnson Space Center here in Houston.
Now, was that your idea? Was that the university's? How did the connection between you and Johnson first happen?
So, unbeknownst to me, the Johnson Space Center at the time had a cooperative education program where they were bringing in college students from around the country. Certainly, probably the majority were local schools here, Texas A&M, Rice. But because Johnson was a national, federal facility, they were trying to cast the net wide. So the director here at the Johnson Space Center of the co-op program, and at the University of Akron, because every student had to do an internship, they had established some kind of a relationship before I ever arrived. And the fall of my junior year, when you're supposed to set up your internship to begin, and I walked into the co-op office at the University of Akron. I believe the gentleman's name was Mr. Rice. Might have that wrong, but I can fact check that. And he had just hung up the phone with Houston and saying, hey, are we still going to send somebody this spring? And he said, so there's an opportunity if you're interested. And that timing of me walking into his office, and so he kind of turned and said, would you like to go to Houston? We don't, sending students from here we try to do, but it's not for everybody because it's so far. And without even thinking about it, I said yes. And then in subsequent days, the thought of that decision started to hit me, but it was kind of surreal that it happened that quick, and was able to, January 3rd of 1990, load up a Chevy S10 Blazer and drive down to Houston for my first semester as an intern here.
And basically not come back.
Well, yeah, I came back to finish school, and then July of 1992, I started full time. The beauty of the program, certainly they could interview me for that year that I was here, but I could also interview them and see, is this really something for me, or was I just glamorized by the human space flight mystique, as you characterized it, with Neil Armstrong and John Glenn and others, but the benefit of finding out what the work actually entailed was huge. I say 40 hours a week is a long time to be doing something you don't like, and so it was huge to be able to realize this is something I was interested in.
Now, it seems like Americans used to be so proud of our space program. And now there's some questions sometimes about, where is all this money being spent and is it being spent well? So I did a quick look at Google and I came up with a short list of inventions or products that we use as a result. I want to name a few and ask you if you can add it all to that. Scratch-resistant lenses, ear thermometers, cordless tools, satellite navigation, memory foam, camera phones. We probably wouldn't use Velcro the way we do if NASA hadn't made it so well known to all of us. Can you comment at all about that connection between the things that you either invent or use and how they eventually come to us?
Yeah, I will do that. There's a great website out there. It's like nasa.gov/benefits, which goes through in great detail all of the things that the space agency benefits us everyday lives. But you certainly listed some. To me, the space flight's hard. And so the challenge also for us is from a technical perspective, I like to say it's mass to orbit or pounds to orbit. So everything, the smaller you can get it, the more economically beneficial it is to you. So computers that were mainframes are now, I set my iPhone a little ways away, but I now carry that thing in my pocket and has great capability, all because of the desire to reduce the size. But today here in Houston, we've got a tropical storm out in the Gulf, and just the benefits that NASA brings in terms of monitoring our own planet, of human health benefits. We're doing research on the International Space Station right now that looks at different drugs that can perhaps benefit the human body as it deals with disease and sickness. You mentioned satellite navigation. The economy thrives only because of the assets in space right now. GPS, banking, everything that we do is through space. So it's hard to quantify something that may resonate with an individual, but when you look at the breadth of what NASA's been able to provide, it's huge. And so I, as an engineer, failed to communicate that well early in my career. I used to think, my job is to do this. It's public affairs job to broadcast it. And one day, several years ago, my mom asked me about the shuttle landing on the moon. It's like, the shuttle never landed on the moon, but my own mom didn't know that, and I wasn't doing a good job of communicating what we do and why we do it. So that's important to be able to influence the sphere that's around you, around the benefits of a human spaceflight.
Today we are talking to Akron native Steve Koerner, Johnson Space Center Deputy Director. Now, did you ever have a desire to be an astronaut yourself?
I don't think I did. There's some that say, my whole life is dedicated to trying to be an astronaut. I think I would, given the chance, fly, but it was never a strong motivator to me to apply to be an astronaut. And it's hard to, I've paused and thought about that. To me, I like the problem-solving challenge that human spaceflight provides, but hadn't been drawn to pursuing being an astronaut.
Now, let me ask you, because I'm going to assume, and we're not supposed to assume, but I'm going to assume that you know several, if not all, of the astronauts. Do you find, is there something different about them? Someone that is willing, to get in a spaceship and make perhaps a one-way trip somewhere, or the astronaut Kelly, who was there for a year by himself. Is there something different about them? Is there something different in their DNA?
To me, the thing that they all have is that risk-taking characteristic. And it's quite a sacrifice to do that. I know there's glamorous aspects of it, and you mentioned Scott being up there with his colleagues for a year. We've had a handful of folks around that same time, but think about the harsh environment of space, the sacrifice to your family. But spaceflight's hard, and we haven't made it where it's routine. And so to me, the characteristic that they all have to possess, but as we select them, we have to look for is that risk-taking characteristic, or the seriousness of what they're raising their hand for. You know, there's many that may raise their hand and think they have that risk-taking capability, but we go through quite the process to make sure we've got individuals that know what they're signing up for. And I'm impressed. You know, I applaud them for what they do, and especially the families for what they're signing up to do. You know, you made the statement that they're signing up for a one-way trip. Our goal is not for it to be one-way
Yes,
trips.
I understand.
But impressive to think about the commitment, the desire, the drive that they have.
Is 2024 realistic for a moon landing?
You know, NASA is excited to get back to the moon. I mentioned earlier that I recall as a young kid watching lunar landings. And even though I work here at the Johnson Space Center and I stand on the shoulder of the Apollo giants that did that, to me that still feels like not my generation. And so looking forward to my generation being able to not only return to the moon, to sustain or to stay there, and then move on to Mars. And to me, I can't think of a more impressive endeavor than that. 2024 comes with challenges. We've got great plans on how to get there. Plans and funding aligning to pull that off will be the key to seeing if those dates are reasonable. But yeah, we're excited to go back.
From your perspective and your experience, how do you answer the question about life on other planets?
You know, it's one of NASA's goals to search for it, to see if it's there. And so I don't know what the answer is when you look at the immensity of the universe. And just here in December, we're going to be launching, not Johnson, but NASA's going to be launching the James Webb Telescope that's going to be able to peer back and look at light from a long, long time ago. And so excited to explore, to discover. To me, that's one of the things, one of the benefits of NASA that I didn't talk about earlier is scientific discoveries. You know, the more, for me personally, the more I understand, the more I question, the more I want to know. And so is there life out there? That's a cool thing to go try and pursue. You know, just here recently, the Perseverance rover run out of JPL on Mars collected its first sample. And so being able to take steps toward uncovering discoveries like that is what NASA's about and what motivates me.
Now, as many people know, and as I mentioned in the intro, you know, Judy Resnick was born and raised in Akron. She was older than I was, but when I was a little girl, I was in a carpool with her, which I still remember. She had a unique example of her discipline even then. But is that the astronauts that went before, are they still a part of the program? Are they remembered at all in current time?
Oh, you bet. Well, you mentioned her, and so let me, I've mentioned a couple times human spaceflight's hard. We've lost 17 astronauts in this effort, 3 in the Apollo 1 fire, 7 in Challenger, and 7 in Columbia. And in most of our operational facilities around this campus and probably NASA-wide, there are little reminders or mission plaques of them that are lit, or, you know, kind of memory joggers of each of us needs to be performing well, because the harsh environment of space doesn't allow us to do anything but perform well. And so those that have given the ultimate sacrifice are certainly remembered. But of the astronauts, there are multiple ways in which former astronauts are honored, sought after, mentors. So absolutely just take advantage of the opportunities that they bring. Last week here in Houston, Administrator Senator Bill Nelson visited and had the opportunity in the old Apollo mission control room, 2 of the Apollo astronauts and Flight Director Gene Kranz met with Bill Nelson. And so it's it's always, I have to be careful that I don't turn into a little kid around those individuals,
Sure.
and do my best to keep it professional. But yeah, the astronaut office is a commodity that's well utilized around here, as you might imagine.
Now, I have two questions I have to get to before I go to our lightning round. Now, I was
Okay.
surprised. Wikipedia, which sometimes is not correct, tells us that the actual words were, Houston, we had a problem, not we have a problem. We all grew up with Houston, we have a problem, that was uttered by Jack Swigert. Do you know which one is correct?
I don't. I should know that, right? I mean, that's a monumental moment here in Houston, and I don't remember the Apollo 13 event as it occurred, but part of our training program here, we do lots of lessons learned and what after action reviews, and so that event, just an impressive set of things, a case study perhaps for younger engineers coming into this program. It's easy to look back and see the success of it and that we returned those crews successfully. But when you think about it, at the time, they had no idea. Very impressive to see how teamwork pulled that off. So that monumental, impressive event for the flight control team and those Apollo 13 astronauts.
Now, I have to ask you, I came upon this kind of little fact, and I'm curious about it. One spacesuit costs $150 million. Do you know, is that?
Well, I don't know. I can't justify the price that you just quoted, but what I can tell you, if you think of a spacesuit, it's essentially a mini spacecraft.
Yes. So is there, as you answer that, when you answer, please answer, is there like a correct way, a right way, and a wrong way to wear a spacesuit? Because it is like you're in the middle of a computer.
Well, there is absolutely a correct way to wear it. And if you think about what it needs to do, it needs to protect you from the harsh environment of space, and so it can't leak. It needs to be airtight. There's a list of requirements that go into the spacesuit's design, development, and testing and operation. And so when you look at it, if you're just calling it a suit, maybe doesn't do it justice.
So what do we call it? Is there a more proper name?
Well, the spacesuit, EVA spacesuit is the name of it, but my reasoning there is it's more than just a piece of clothing, or it protects an individual from the harshness of space and allows them to be productive. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it is amazing in what it's been able to do. As we go back to the moon and on to Mars, our spacesuit design and the spacesuit that we use will need to evolve. And so we're in the throes of working that right now on what that new spacesuit is going to be for we call it Artemis. Artemis is this NASA campaign to return to the moon and go on to Mars. But this new suit for Artemis is in work as we evolve it for its needs.
I'm going to ask for 1 or 2 word answers. I know it's not fair, but I'm going to do it anyways, okay? Can NASA benefit from any information or exploration from private companies that are also trying to go?
Absolutely.
Yes, you can. Okay.
I would love to take more than 2 words to say why that is, but if you really want 1 or 2 answers, I'll stop.
Okay. Is there a best space movie?
Apollo 13.
Okay. Most important quality for an astronaut?
Resilience.
Resilience.
Grit.
Those are 2 of my as a communication coach, those are 2 of my very favorite words, resilience and grit.
I can't take ownership for grit. I heard Megan McArthur, who's on the International Space Station right now, use that term recently, and I said, yep, that's a good word. I'm going to use it.
Best thing about Northeast Ohio?
Family.
Something that would surprise us about Houston, NASA?
Something that would surprise you. Teamwork excellence.
Something that surprised you about NASA or the space program?
Individual performance matters.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes, it does. I've tried not to ask you this question, so I'm going to ask it in this way. How many times do you get asked about how an astronaut uses a bathroom?
I don't get asked that very often because I'm not an astronaut, but being around interviews with astronauts, that gets asked very frequently, so 0 to me.
Okay. As far back as 1800 BC, civilizations have been interested in what they see when they look up. The Greeks, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Mayans, the Chinese, the Persians, all had an interest in space. Our guest today works in the vaulted space program that has given us so much from Tang to Waze. Thank you to Akron's Steve Koerner, Johnson Space Center Deputy Director, for sharing his story with his hometown, his very proud hometown. I'm Leslie Ungar. Thank you for joining us today on Forum 360, your global outlook with a local view. I have time for one last question. A future goal for NASA that would surprise us?
Future goal for NASA that would surprise you. I think people on Mars, I don't know if that surprises you, but the reality that is soon may surprise people.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We so appreciate it here in Northeast Ohio. We will think of you often and wish you the best.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.